Good morning, Alexis.
Oh, hey, Alok. Good morning. Sorry, I
Hey,
was looking elsewhere. How are you?
good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining the call. Um, let's wait for folks to gather. I don't know how many people are going to gather actually because of that time change. So
Yeah,
let's see. Hopefully, we'll have enough to get going. Hello, Joey. Thank you for joining. We're going to wait a couple of more minutes for folks to gather, and if we have enough folks, we'll go and proceed with the meeting.
sure.
Okay, I don't know if people got the notice. I'm hesitant to ping the whole channel on Slack, but maybe I'm just going to do so, and then I'll go over the agenda. So I assume you can see my screen now.
Yeah, it's visible.
I believe it is there, yes. Okay, who do we have? Okay, it's only the three of us. Well, look, I don't know if we'll have the whole meeting today, but at least given the two of you are here, I can start gathering initial feedback from the two of you. So I won't necessarily go over the whole agenda right now, but I just wanted to, since I had the both of you, see whether or not you would have some initial feedback that you'd like to provide on the various use cases that we'd like to achieve for the release 3. So I believe last week, right, we discussed mainly these four for SMO2O cloud enablement. So create, delete cluster, and then instantiate, terminate NF. Do you believe that we should target more for R3, or that's good enough? Because I see basically two user story, one for creation and deletion. That would be one user story that could comprise, the lifecycle management of cluster creation and of clusters, including creation and deletion. Same for the NF.
Yeah.
Um,
So is this some sort of a priority, right? So, or is it like we will start with the create and delete cluster, and that will be the highest priority for the R3?
yeah,
Because
it's a
like,
very it's a good question, Alok, and we had the exact same question internally, to be honest, and the way I answered it is, to some extent, infrastructure is a prerequisite to the application.
Yeah, I
And
think you're going to
because
have to prioritize the create cheerleader cluster, right?
yes,
Yeah, but before that, there is this cloud registration and initialization as well, where you actually deploy your cluster, right? The
y-
environment or
so
mm,
yes, but this is more SMO related, if you agree.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So and that might be a good. I believe these three are more SMO related, and we don't have to rule them out. If we believe we have or ability to create a user story for this, we could create 3 user stories in there. One for the OCloud registration or initialize it. Basically, one user story for the first 3 here that would really
Mm.
be about how the OCloud come to be created and then exist in the SMO, and then one for each of these two.
I have a question on the last two. When you've instantiated terminate the ORAN NF. What do you mean here by ORAN NF?
So we would use the open air interface NFs, right? So if you know in R2, ORAN SC folks contributed some operators. We're currently working to build CRDs to deploy these NFs. So the goal will just to, as part of R3,
But
validate.
okay, but over the O2 DMS, you cannot instantiate an ORAN NF necessarily. It depends what you mean here by. That's why I ask what you mean by ORAN NF,
Okay, so can you?
because like if when I see ORAN NF, I think cloudified NF, and that is not necessarily done by. You need a service orchestrator to do that, which is
Okay,
not
hang
going
on.
to be covered here.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I just want to log in to capture these comments, because sorry, I thought I was logged in.
And this exactly takes us back to there is so all these operations and the use cases will be over O2IMS and O2DMS, which is between the SMO and the OCloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, the end user will be somewhere sitting in the SMO who will be instantiating or creating a cluster, and same for the NFs, the workloads, right?
Well,
So
so you're absolutely right. But we don't need to have all the pieces together in R3, right? We could
No,
say,
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on. Yeah, I agree. Go on.
well, that was pretty much my comment. So we don't need necessarily to say we need everything. Of course, we want everything. And to the mentioned point, we know that it it should and it will be coming from SMO, the request, but that doesn't mean that we can um, not realize these without an SMO in the picture. We can still do them without an SMO in the picture. It's just that we would be missing one piece that we could be adding in the next release of
Yeah.
Nephew, right? So it's for us to, if it's for
Yeah.
us to
Mm.
identify what we believe will bring, quote unquote, like the industry as part of R3, the most relevance um, in terms of the use case we want to put forward.
Yeah. But
yeah,
okay,
but
but the
like
problem,
if I okay, go ahead.
yeah, the problem I have is you write here O2 DMS, and then you're talking about instantiating an ORAN NF, and as far as I'm aware, you're realizing or you're using the O2 DMS Kubernetes profile, and that cannot instantiate an NF. It can only instantiate an NF deployment, which would be part of an NF, or it could be the whole thing, but it's not. ORAN NF is a loaded term, is my point basically. And if you're talking about, we have to be clear what we're talking about here. And also those use cases 321, 325 are quite volatile at the minute. So like my personal opinion is that they should be 321 and 325 will be NF deployments. So instantiate, terminate, an NF deployment, which I think does fall within the NFO view. And we don't care about what happens at the SO in the SMO, right? What we see here is it will get told we need to deploy or instantiate these NF deployments. Okay, great. So
Yeah,
that's what I think. So it should be NF deployment, but so, or an NF isn't a defined term somewhere necessarily. Is
Then,
my point.
yeah. Then another comment when you say, Alexis, about we need not to have like the whole realization of the O2 IMS and the O2 DMS, and which I agree, right? And then here the ORAN NF is the OAI application or the workloads, right, that we will be targeting. But then how will that different than what we are delivering in the R2? There also, aren't we working on the OAI workloads to be running on or in a Nephew design or Nephew architecture that we have
yes, yeah,
developed so far?
we do, and this is not to say it will be any different. It's just to capture from this team standpoint what we need. And today, nobody is stipulating that we can instantiate, let's say, an NF deployment, to use, Joey, the right term or the term you suggested, right? So maybe we say this is one of the use case we're interested for R3, and while we discuss it with SIG1, we say, well, actually, it's been done already in R2. And so then, good, we move on. But given R2 had little to no requirement defined for it, it's not bad for us to define these user story now, either to claim them completed as part of R2 or to make sure we complete them as part of R3.
And I think also, just because you asked about this, I like the list, and I think we should do the instantiate and terminate of NF deployments in R3. I think it's a good, good goal to try and capture what you have here on the screen. I just wanted to be explicit that if you're talking about the K8's profile, it's NF deployments only. But in terms of what you're trying to capture, I think it's a good start.
Okay. So I did, oh crap, I deleted all the comments.
Another.
Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. I'm not that good with these things.
Okay.
So good. I captured that one.
Yep.
So I'll,
And then another comment was about the prioritization. I'm not sure
yes.
if you wanted to capture that as well.
So, but let's try to resolve this one. What would be a good, what do we believe would be a good priority here? Right? So do we want to first, so let me put this back. Okay, hang on. If we look back at this, and by the way, I cannot see the chat. Joseph, I saw you join. Thank you. If there is anything in the chat, just please. Actually, it's okay. I was able to put all the chat.
Also, a very quick comment on this, Alexis. Sorry to cut you. But I think we discussed last week, and from Ericsson, we still have some further clarification comments. I think we touched upon like how does the Nephew API adapter basically what will be the scope of this API adapter versus the whole OCOM, which will be accountable for the northbound integration in this MOS communication. I think that's out of scope, right? What I understood from the last week's discussion. But maybe we wanted to have some sort of a northbound adapter as well, same as we are showing here, the southbound Nephew API adapter, right? Which will integrate with the rest of the MOS services.
So the picture is not giving us good credit. You see here, it was more of a Nephew API adapter, and here was depicted northbound and here it's depicted more southbound. The reality is it should be in the middle box, right? It would be both northbound and southbound type of adapter.
So
It's
does
not.
Nephew API adapter be accountable for the north and south integration?
I think the point is to say it could be anything you would like it to be. We recognize that if we want Nephew to play a role in FOCOM and NFO, there will be an Nephew API adapter as part of FOCOM and NFO. If you don't want Nephew to play a role there, then you don't have that necessarily Nephew API adapter. So that API adapter is really just to say that it is what it's like a
No, I mean, at
anything that
this,
would be required to fulfill some of the Nephew controllers as part of FOCOM and NFO would be characterized as the Nephew API adapter, whether northbound or southbound. We don't make that distinction, at least not at this stage of that diagram. I
I
recognize
think
the
it
way it
was
looks
one of
like
the
it looks.
comments last week about the northbound integration. Should it be part of the scope, or I thought like we had some sort of a comment about no, we don't want to put it in the Nephew scope. But again, from my point of view, I don't have the strong opinion for now, but still discussing and debating internally as well. Like, what are the possible challenges if we have such an adapter part of the Nephew scope, and how will that look like? Will it be some sort of a thick adapter, or will it be just a RESTful interface? I mean, yeah, right. So because now it's not just about the specification. Now we are talking about the implementation. So we have to think on that side as well, right? I mean, how will that be implemented? What are the different challenges? Here we have like a bigger box saying FOCOM. Who will be owning, or will that be like one implementation where Nephew is realizing the FOCOM as a SMOS, right? And that will integrate with the rest of the SMO services. So I think that is a little bit blurry, at least in my head for now.
And
Not sure if it is clear for others, but that is one of
no,
the things which I pointed out last week and wanted to bring it today as well.
so I think it is a fair comment. I would, if you don't mind capturing it,
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at the notes from last week. I'm not sure I have that specific comment, but I would appreciate if you can just add the comment on the box here on that slide. It's a fair comment, Alok. To be honest with you, it's also blurry in my mind, and I'm not trying to project an implementation. I don't think our goal is to project an implementation at this point, and that's even the reason why I would suggest in the use case we start with what is in the OCloud domain and not the SMO domain, as we can continue evolving this architecture throughout the releases. The initial reason we put the Nephew adapter here is the following. So Ravi came up with this because he said the northbound of FOCOM and FO are all around SMOS APIs. I think we agree with that.
Right.
And then what we said is that there is a logical adapter function in FOCOM and FO that will map it to Nephew API, right? So that's that, and so that's that Nephew API adapter that we're talking about here. So in this context, this is more about that northbound interaction to these SMOs. And then because we expect that the Nephew will be able to talk O2, either Kubernetes profile for DMS, either whatever we have in the IMS spec. And that's why I think it was positioned that way. I just believe when it was translated here, it was not made exactly the same, but I think that's more of an oversight rather than on purpose.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's a lot clearer because I had a similar question, and this picture here, Alexis, is a lot. It makes a lot more sense. And or even if it could say, just like Nephew API northbound adapter or something, just so that it's clear. Because as you said, I think the expectation is Nephew will speak O2 southbound. So Like I don't. Is it necessary to have some sort of adapter southbound on the NFO if it's just going to be if it's just going to be Kubernetes? So, but as you said, we can. It'll evolve as the architecture evolves and the picture can evolve. But I just thought, there's a bit of confusion with that picture on slide 3.
But maybe, I think I follow your comment, Joey, here. But I think for the FOCOM, specifically about the O2 IMS, I think we might require the adapter for the southbound as well. And the reason is we could have different cloud infrastructure providers, right? And they have different sorts of CRs, the custom resources, right? Which could be specific to one particular provider. And to understand that, you need to have the corresponding plugin which can like understand that set of language, right? And could support the use cases that are defined in the ORAN, right? So I think we might need one adapter for at least for the O2 IMS, maybe not for the O2 DMS, since we have the different profiles there, one for the Kubernetes and for the HC. But yeah, I'll try to capture that in the option slide, the comment, and we can circle back next week when we have some sort of a quorum.
Okay, I'll try to add some of the notes in the agenda. But okay, yeah, I think this is good discussion. That slide is really meant to depict what was the intention. So what transcribed in slide 3 might not be accurate.
Yeah, this is a good slide, definitely. Please clears a lot
That's
of
why
questions.
we called it, zoom into this most function, because it's really what it is about. But maybe this is not giving good justice of what we tried to zoom in here. And maybe
which is okay,
we just,
right? Yeah. I mean, you can start with some introduction and then zoom
exactly,
in.
which is the initial intent. But so with all the things we just said, right, we I think acknowledge there is more work for us overall for FOCOM NFO and discuss the positioning of Nefio in SMO. And so now if I look at the use case, just based on the discussion we have, although these use cases are, I think, fairly realistic in what needs to be accomplished, do we really want to position them for R3, or would we rather flesh out more details here? And maybe the details are very simple, what you said, Alok, or maybe the details are more complex, I don't know. But we need to convert in some use cases between now and the next 2 weeks. So that's why we're discussing priority. This is what led us here. Do we believe that this should be high priority? I definitely believe, actually, yeah. Let me take a stab in priority order. If you ask me, I would have it probably two set of priorities, right? I would have it that way, and let's like, how do I do it? Okay, I'll fix it after, but this, I want to restart numbering right here. Okay, there. Okay, great. My point is, okay, I'm failing with what I'm trying to accomplish live. We have really two things. Here at the top, this is more SMO related use cases. I mean, I don't know if anyway, you'll tell me, and this is more OCloud related use cases. I don't know if you agree with that characterization.
But if you see the use cases in the ORAN use case document, right? So there, the triggering point comes from the SMO, and for that
Always,
purpose,
yes.
I mean, I'll not say these are SMO related, and then the OCloud related, right? And the reason is like all of these use cases are actually triggered by the SMO, right? Whether I need to register a new OCloud, or I want to create a new cluster or instantiate a new NF deployment.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the more I'm reading about them, you're right. This is self-contained in the OCloud. The SMO is the trigger point, but all these
Right.
things are self-contained in the cloud because these three use cases really are about mostly inventory, mostly. And so the ability to write in the inventory, to update the inventory, and then to query the inventory.
Yeah.
The registration here is rather more about SMO because it's cloud, calling home to the SMO. So, these two are more about having an inventory and a query function on top of the inventory.
Maybe you can classify the infrastructure and network functions use cases, two different. And some things are just focusing on the infrastructure, and some things you figure it based on network functions.
Okay. So would it be something like this?
Yeah.
And so I definitely would
I
want to
think
get.
if you see the next slide, actually, they have user NF track user story identification. So this is one question I had is here also I think we say deploy ORAN NFs, right? So won't the use cases mentioned in slide 5, the NF use cases become part of this? And so in that case this would just be infrastructure, right? This
Okay, let
slide 5.
me get. I understand your comment, Joseph. Let's not jump into the NF track just yet. I think I can explain why it's saying this here. What is meant on the NF track is really more it's really more about the network function, and the fact we can deploy them. The act of deploying will come from the O2 DMS, right? So that's the NF deployment, and that's more from the O cloud side. This is really the network function needs to be deployable, whereas here is to say this is how you deploy that network function, or this is how you terminate. Actually, so this is the shell, like this is the process, whereas this is the actual NF itself.
Okay, so this is more of a generic process in slide 5.
Correct, as defined by these use cases of ORAN.
Okay. Okay, but then you would be realizing some NFs here, right? Because this is implementation we're talking about, right?
So let me take that example, Joseph. Right now, you're working on that CRD, NF deployment CRD, I believe, or I forget the exact name, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that allows instantiate and termination of network function deployments, correct?
Yeah.
Then that's it. When you've done that code, we can instantiate, terminate NF deployment. But that doesn't mean that we used them in any way. We just have the functionality available. Then here on the NF track, we're using that functionality to actually deploy and realize a CUCP, CUP, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So one is more about the functionality that is supplied by the O cloud to deploy NF. The other one is using that functionality to deploy NF. I don't know if the distinction is clear. Joey, I don't know if your hand is about this. If it is, then if you have some clarification you want to add, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah, Kai, I had 2 points, but on this, yeah, I've not seen this slide, so I'd have to have a look. I'm not sure if where it fits in on the O2 DMS is my problem with it, considering the way ORAN is. Again, the term ORAN NF is tough one for me to wrap my head around because it's not well defined. I think there's a bit of a disconnect in
That's going to
ORAN.
be. So I think we agree that's going to change. It's going to change to
even
NF
if you
deployment.
go back, but if you go back to slide 6, and you talk about ORAN NFs and OCU and ODUs and ORUs, yeah, I'd have to look at this slide and think, but I'm not sure exactly what the distinction is. But if you go back then to slide 5, I wouldn't call these network function split between infrastructure and network function, maybe infrastructure and deployment or deployment related. Again, because the DMS doesn't really have a view of what a network function is. Then I would say you can have the split if you want, but it should be infrastructure and deployment. Then I have a question. Yeah, you have these use cases. The first 3 talking about the registration, talking about the inventory updates, the querying of all cloud information. Is there, and please excuse my ignorance if it's been done already, but why not deploying an cloud? Is that did you not deploy the cloud first before, and then we look at the registration and initialization?
So yes, when you say deploy no cloud, in the context of Nefio, right now the cloud notion doesn't really exist, right? So
Okay.
that's something we would have to create. What exists is really more of a cloud node cluster. That's the closest we have in R2. So we could, and that's absolutely a good user story, is to say we want to introduce the notion of cloud in Nefio, and now we have a user story in R3 that is really about that cloud creation, into which we will deploy cloud node clusters. So I think that's a fair ask as well. But
Yeah,
that's up to us, right? And maybe that's the right next step.
yeah.
I mean, the right
Again, just a bit cautious of the term. I think it will be rather registration of an cloud, because we are not creating, or it's not about the genesis of the cloud that we are talking about, right? We are not.
Well, that's my
It could be
question.
already existing, right? We are just registering with the SMOs so that it can use it as an execution environment where it can create cluster or instantiate new workloads.
Well, I guess that's my
in the given
question,
cluster.
because you can, in the context of ORAN, you are deploying an cloud, but if you want, I'm not saying we have to cover that here either. We can always say, well, the assumption is there is no cloud and we're registering it, or the assumption is there is no cloud and we're creating a cluster. I'm just asking the question: do we need to have it here, or is it kind of out of our scope, or do we need to care? Because maybe we don't.
I think no, I don't. I think so. We should care, because we are talking about the realization of the implementation of the O2 IMS, which is between the SMO and the cloud, right? And they should exist, or there should be a notion of what
But there's a
is
difference
SMO
between
and what is cloud.
no, but there's a difference between having a notion of an cloud and deploying one. If we obviously, yes, we need to understand what the cloud is, and so we can create clusters on it, and deploy our workloads. But do we need to talk about the actual creation of one? Is my question.
Creation of an cloud, I don't think so. We should focus much on the creation, because that we haven't discussed in the ORAN use case
There is
spec
deploying
itself,
right? There's use case 311 is deploying an cloud, or 312, excuse me.
It's the pre-deployment process.
No, 312, sorry.
That's the platform software installation.
And this use case describes the deployment of an cloud and installing the platform, cloud platform software. But that is the deployment of an cloud. Look, I'm just asking the question. I'm not saying we need to cover it, because I also think if you talk about the deployment use cases, and the NF track, it's fairly up in the air in ORAN. So I would struggle to see how we reference, say, use case 321 when right now in ORAN that's very unstable, in my view.
I think that comment is fair, Joey, but I don't think that Nefio needs to wait for a specification to be finalized to do.
No, Yeah.
Okay,
and I
so we
agree.
agree.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's
I'm
the reason why
just being
this
aware.
is more. Yeah, but that's the point. Like this use case reference is like the guiding principle of us realizing the intent of that use case in Nephio. Then it will evolve as part of the specification evolving, but that doesn't mean we can have something already, right? And I think that's the intent.
Yeah, and I think maybe we could not only reference the use case, but maybe reference the Kubernetes DMS spec, which talks about instantiating an NF deployment. That might also help us here.
I think that's a good one. These are the service function, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I don't disagree about the discussion about the OCloud, what to do about it. I'm not sure, but I think actually no, I do have an opinion. Let's take that to the broader team when the team is there. I still believe that if I need to take a stab at it, these four we should try to commit to for our R3. I think these four are the ones that we could say Nephio has a way to achieve them, even though the spec is not there. We want Nephio to being able to achieve them the Nephio way, right? Of course, using as much as possible the standard when possible. I would start with this, and then the track about. So there is a no cloud track, a no cloud creation track, and this is where we have these three. I would say, right? This is really more about that cloud creation track, and that's not something that I believe we should start with for November train, because we have 2 weeks to converge on what it means for us, and I think it's going to take a bit of a discussion. Whereas these four,
I think we need more discussion absolutely for this. Plus, I don't. I mean, I have an opinion at least that the creation. I think we should not confuse with creation versus registration. So we are not creating, and I don't see a use case in the spec there today that talks about the genesis of the OCloud, right?
no, there is none, but we'll have well, the spec is clear. It's up to the implementation. Nephio is one.
Exactly.
So
So we
Nephio will
don't.
have to figure out the cloud genesis. Nephio
Yeah,
will have to figure that out.
but that should not be on the O2 interface, right? That can be
No,
by
it
the
should
OCloud
not.
platform provider itself, right?
No, it should not. I
Or
agree. But
yeah,
it should come from that working group that is discussing how to map ORAN to Nephio. We should have a
sure.
say about the cloud genesis, even though it's not a spec, or even though it won't be in the spec. We'll have to come up with the proper user story for Nephio to implement, right?
But
So I still believe it's part of our discussions.
But why should it occur in the ORAN integration discussion? Because I don't see that.
Well, it might not, but we might have requirement for it. So we might have some. So let's. I suggest let's keep. I captured it at the bottom here. I'll add a note. I think it requires discussion, but I think we could agree that we don't want to target this for R3 for now. Because I agree with you, Alok. And I'm sure we can debate on this, but I want to focus a little bit on identifying the use cases and moving it that needle forward to hit the December 1st.
Sure. Another comment on these use cases. Are we after like implementing and realizing the whole end-to-end use cases or the parts of it? And the reason I'm asking, this starts with the SMO triggering point, and then some of the requests coming in on the O2 interface, which is between the SMO and the OCloud, which I think to begin with, we don't have in the Nephio, right?
Yeah, and so that's fine. I think as part of, and that's and thank you, that's going to be a good segue. As part of us defining this use case, so I think some of you attended the meeting yesterday, the SIG meeting, but we have like a user story template that we'll have to follow. I'm not sure we have to follow it for R3. I'm trying to get confirmation. But if we do, one of the prerequisites can be, you know, an SMO is deployed, or we don't have any SMOs, and the trigger point will be a REST call or whatnot. You know, I think these specific consideration that you brought up, like most of the use case start at the SMO being the trigger point, we can capture these disclaimers as part of the user story definition. So it's clear that we leave the SMO out of the picture for that first iteration of the use case.
Fair enough. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we agree instantiate NF deployment, terminate NF deployment, which is in line with the work currently happening in R2. So Joseph, maybe I have a question for you, because a comment was made that these are actually happening right now in R2, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah,
the question was, what exactly do we want to achieve with these two in R3? Do you see some gaps in what we're implementing today?
Yeah, I think so. What we do currently is, I think, very specific to OAI. So I think more requirements need to come from this group so that it can be more generic, so applicable to all RANs, not very specific to OAI. So for R2 is just a demonstration using OAI, so it will be very little bit more specific to OAI.
Very
so
good.
a broader
Okay.
discussion is required. So that is why this forum is input from this forum is very important. I feel so. For example, there was discussion about RAN CRDs. What parameters of for configurations of RAN needs to be considered. So those kind of discussions, I think, needs to happen in a broader group, and maybe this group or RAN specific group would be the best group, I think, to discuss that and finalize anything to do with RAN configurations or parameters that needs to be part of NIFIO.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So if I understand, in R2, we're delivering more of a POC that is really tailored to OAI. And so now with this use case for R3, we want to make these use cases more generic. And so they will...
Generic.
Yeah.
And of course, we might demonstrate it with OAI, but still, I think it should be more generic so that, yeah.
But no, but that's great. So we can have, so I can pull together a roadmap for these use cases and explain, you know, what is going to be the difference between R2 and R3, which is what we're looking for. So thank you. I think it's clear now.
Yeah.
And create delete cluster. We need more discussion as well, but I believe I'm aware where they sit. We don't have delete at all. We have create, but it's very minimal. So, okay. Okay, so I think this is good for that track. Is there any more comments or questions? Okay, so I capture a bunch of notes from today. I'll clean up my notes and add them in the minutes. I haven't gone through the agenda. I didn't ask for approval of the previous meeting notes given very minimal attendance today, and so that's why I went a bit off scripts. But the initial gathering, that feedback gathering I have now is good. So thank you. So now on the NF track, okay, so the same comment applies to everywhere there is an ORAN NF. I'm just going to mark it here. Same comment as previous slide.
Yeah,
okay,
and I think the Nearati Rick, I think I had asked a question, and I think that Sagar had clarified that it would be ORAN ST Nearati Rick that we will use for R3. Maybe you can clarify that.
Okay,
ORAN
so
SC.
okay, let me do this.
And
So
the
that's from
other components are OAI actually,
that's
like
OSC. Yeah, that's
CUCP,
that. Well,
CUP,
that's what.
OP,
Yeah. DRU as well,
right?
or they
Yeah,
have
yeah.
they have an RF simulator, right?
Yes, they have an RF simulator. I'm not sure if they will use the actual RU in terms of the like the USRP board. So we can check that, but I think it would be coming from OAI. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
either it's
that's
RF simulator or
okay. So I broke it down that way. That way it's
yeah,
clear where
yeah.
these
And
NF
also I think
deployments.
there is some work happening in ORAN SE as well related to deploying near-RT rig using operate K8 operator already. There's some initial work ongoing already in ORAN SE. So we should uh, maybe discuss with ORAN SE team as well, the near-RT team, rig team on I mean, we should not basically redo what they're doing. So we should have some collaboration as well. We should discuss that part.
Yeah, I'll ping Sishu and the Wind River team to see if they're aware and can come up with some sharing what's happening there.
Right.
Okay, I'm just going to put an asterisk just to not lose track. So I think deploy DNF deployments from OAI OSC, that's definitely top of mind. But then, so like we have 3 additional use cases in there, and again, it needs to be realistic. You know, SIG1 is expecting maybe 2 use cases from each working group. Right now, we have maybe 2 or 4, depending on how we read them, just on the OCloud track. And here we have another 4. So I doubt everything will be achievable. But let's keep discussing these 3 at the bottom, and then we'll discuss how to prioritize. But the retrieve health of deployed or NF or NF deployments. Yeah, exactly. There was discussion about are we going to utilize O1 to do these things?
Yeah. So the the retrieve health and reconfigurer that might require O1, right? So I think the definition of O1 and how do you realize it in FPO is the open question. Before we get into this, I think we should have some understanding of how to realize O1 in general. So I think after that, I think there would be this configuration of NF first before even talking about reconfiguring.
Right.
The NF configuration itself needs to be discussed.
Okay, so I captured the comment that these 2 required ORAN, and so there is a prerequisite on how O1 was realized before we can even tackle these use cases.
You're right.
Okay,
And I
thank
think
you.
the first point should be configuration of ORAN NF. That's because even when you're even in the first step, right, where you're saying deploy ORAN NF, you would need some configuration to be happening.
So how
So
about deploy and configure?
yes, but I think that also has a dependency on O1. Currently, we are using CRD to do it, but how do you map it to ORAN's O1 is currently open. So that is one priority item that we need to clarify or probably do a study. So in terms of user story, one is implementation, I think, but we should also do a study and a POC probably for O1. So that should be an item.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I like the idea. I'm capturing it, and we'll see. Okay. Thank you, Joseph. Joey, I see you have
Then we
your.
go into
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
no,
sure.
no. Sorry, Joseph. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
No, I think after the clarity on O1 is there, I think we can focus on the rest of the topics on related to O1. That's what I
Okay.
wanted to say. Yeah.
Joy?
Yeah, mine's just more of a kind of procedural question, maybe, or something. But you said when what's the deadline on having the user stories we're going to have for R3?
December 1st.
December 1st. And is that to have them fleshed out or just to identify what we want to cover?
As fleshed out as possible.
Okay. No, I'm just curious what the,
but
so
no,
I know
I know.
what we're trying to achieve.
The expectation is as fleshed out as possible, but if you, hang on, give me 1 second. If you compare to R2, they had nothing. So whatever we come up with is still better than what was provided in R2. So I mean, it's expected that it's not going to be perfect, but I think the intent to SIG1 is now we have the proper working procedure. We know R3 is not. Ideally, it should be the whole fleshed out user story, right? With all the proper details and enough details that the team in SIG3 can implement. Sorry, in SIG2 can implement. I don't think we'll reach that stage this time around for R3, but hopefully we still will provide enough details that they know where we're heading, and will help them, answer some of the more low-level details as we progress. But that's
Okay.
Yeah, that's the intent, Joey.
Thanks.
Okay, so okay, so now, sorry, so we have. Okay, so this is the 3 we would like to look for. Okay, so the roadmap. So I'll clean up the roadmap to update to be looking more towards these things. But at least I'll say that we did come up, the 4 of us, in alignment with how we want to proceed with the use case definitions. So I'm going to get clarity on whether or not we need to follow that template. I would like to follow the template because it will make our life easier, because we would know what they expect. If we don't have a template, it's more free-for-all, which is not great. So if we need to follow the template between now and the next week meeting, I'll work with team to start crafting some of these for the user stories we discussed here, and get the ball rolling, and probably share them on the Slack channel so we can iterate offline until now and next week. I think that would be the goal. So we're supposed to have Sagar to talk about OAI or RAN support. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm going to leave this in the backlog of items to tackle, and then request Seshu and Alexi to discuss SMO, IMS, DMS interaction, what ORAN and ORNSC has done. Yeah, so I recall what that is. I think we tasked Seshu last week to give us the exact list of use cases OSC has implemented. We're waiting for his feedback. So I think these 2 will probably come back to next week. All right, gents, I don't know if there is any further comments on the things we discussed today.
Have we decided the priority? I'm still missing that at least on the slide 5.
No, and I purposely figured I wouldn't go there because I would probably want a broader attendance to define these priorities.
Do you want to capture that then, so that it should not just
yes, I'm going to update the notes right after the call is over. Unfortunately, I can't present it. It's difficult to, and I have captured notes in so many different places. I need to clean this up. But Alok, I will capture the fact that at least we recommend these use cases to be looked at for R3. We have not come up with priority list, but that we believe these would be the one for R3. We will have to prioritize them, but I think regardless, we can still go and update and create these user stories using this template, because we definitely want them to be realized eventually. So if we start building the work on this, I don't think it's lost work regardless. Okay. Anything else, gents?
One more thing, Alexis, regarding the hierarchy rig, right? If you need, I know the person who's working on it, so if you need to discuss something more, then let me know. I can.
You know the person who's working on it in OSC?
Yeah, OC, yeah.
Okay.
So I can.
And so
if you need some discussions around it, then you can invite him as well.
we probably want to have, because you were saying that they start looking at using Kubernetes and deploying or building a Kubernetes operator for it.
Yeah, operators for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely in line with what we want to achieve here. So it would be good to.
At some point, I think we can discuss so that we are on the same page.
Yes.
So we don't redo it here, and we can bridge that gap. Yeah, and whenever I think you can just let me know, and we can discuss that.
Okay, I'm taking that note because I think this is going to be useful when the time comes. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining today. I think it was good discussion, even though we're the four of us. So that's great. Thank you for all the inputs, and with that, I'll see you all the next time I see you all. For some of you, Friday, and for some of you next week.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alexis.
Yeah. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.